Okay, we're going to do our first formal project now, and this project is going to teach you about cloning and also about the difference between a local variable and a global variable. We should have talked about this in class, but the idea behind a global variable is it's something that would apply to everybody. So for example, right now, as I record this, it's Sunday, so a global variable for everybody in the world is that it's Sunday. But a local variable is how much money I have in my pocket. So I have $3.18 in my pocket, and you may have a different amount in your pocket. So even though we might all have a variable called money in pocket, it would be a local variable because there's a different amount for each person. So what we're going to do with this project is we are going to clone cats. And the idea behind cloning cats is a bunch of cats are going to show up, and they're all going to show up in the center here. And then each time they show up, they're going to be born with their own longevity, and they're going to start at an age of 0. They're going to walk around while they're aging, and then when they get old enough, they are going to die. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our parent cat. So this is our parent here, and we're going to say, when I click the green flag, I actually clicked on the wrong thing here, so I need to go to events. When I click on the green flag, parent, please go to looks and hide. So what this will do, when you hide something, it makes it basically disappear. So if I go like this, and I click the green flag, it's going to go poof. All right, excellent. Now, what I also want to have happen is I want it to make clones of itself. So what it's going to do is forever, it's going to wait an amount of time, and I want it to be a random number. So I'm going to go into my operators here where random numbers are located. And I'm going to say pick random from 1 to, let's say, 3 seconds. And every 1 to 3 seconds, please create a clone of myself. So I'm going to go here, scroll down until I see create a clone of myself, and plop it in here. So what this is going to do, it's going to keep creating clones. But if we were to run this, we wouldn't see anything because each of the clones that's being created will have the attributes of the other cat. So since the main cat, the parent cat, is hidden, every time a clone is created, the cat itself that is created, the clone, will also be hidden. So what I'll do is I'll say, when I start as a clone, please show, and I'll go into looks for that. So I want it to be not hidden. So please show up. And then I'm going to ask it to point in a random direction. So turn, instead of turning to the right 15 degrees, I'm actually going to say, please turn to any random number between 1 and 360 degrees. So that will be a full circle. And then forever, I'm going to say walk. So let's see, I'm going to repeat forever. And I'll go to motion and say move. 10 steps would be too quick. So I'm actually going to go, please move 2 steps. So let's go ahead and see what happens when I run this. So I'm going to hit this, and then every random 1 to 3 seconds, a new clone is going to show up, and they're going to be walking in different directions. So far, so good. One thing I notice is they get stuck on the walls. So I don't really want them to be stuck on the walls. Instead, I'm going to have them bounce off the walls. So that's something else that's in motion. I can say if on edge, bounce. Plop that in here. And let's see what happens now. Oftentimes when you're programming, you'll want to make one change at a time and then see what happens after you make that change, as opposed to making a whole bunch of changes and then seeing what will happen. So they're now bouncing off the walls, which is excellent. Now something else I notice is that their rotation style means that sometimes they're upside down. So if they're pointing upside down, they're going to actually appear upside down. I really don't want them to do that. I want them to have a different rotation style, which is called left-right rotation style. So here it is, set rotation style left-right. The best way to show you what this does is just by putting it in, and then you'll see the difference. So I'm going to hit stop. And I'm going to drag this over to here. When I start as a clone, please set rotation style left-right. Let's see if you notice the difference. Right, none of the cats are upside down now, and they bounce off the walls. Now the other thing I said that we wanted to do is we wanted the cats to have a longevity and also an age. So I need to go to variables, and I need to create 2 new variables. And my new variables are here. A variable is where you just store any number. You can make lists too, but we're not going to do that now. We're just going to make a variable. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to make a variable, and it's going to say for all sprites or this sprite only. So since I want each sprite to have its own longevity and its own age, I'm going to label it for this sprite only. And I'm also going to put capital MY to help me remember that it's for one sprite only, not for all sprites. So I'm going to call it my age. Okay, it doesn't have to be capitalized if you don't want to do my age. Sometimes programmers like to put an underscore between variable names. It's up to you. There are other styles too, like this is another style, my age. Anyway, I'm just going to say my age. So for this sprite only. And and you can see it says sprite1 my age, which means that it's only a local variable. So when I start as a clone, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my age to 0. So when I start as a clone, you can have as many of these as you want, and sometimes it makes sense to have more than one, just to help you organize your thinking a little bit. I'm going to say when I start as a clone, please set, going to variables, please set my age to 0. Set my age to 0. And then I want it to count up its age. So I want it to age every second. So I'm going to say, okay, forever, wait 1 second, and then change my age by 1. So I'm going to go back to, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go back to my variables here, and I'm going to change my age. Click on this. Change my age by 1. So every second I'm going to change my age by 1. And the other thing I want it to do is I want it to say its age. Like I want it to say, how old am I? So here's how I'll do this. I'll have another one of these little headers here. When I start as a clone, forever, and then I'm going to have it say, which I think is in looks, pretty sure, say my age. So I'm going to actually just throw the variable in here, and I can see my age is one of the variables, so I'm going to say my age. So each cat is going to have its own age, and if I don't want this to be here, I can actually hide it by going to this right here and clicking on it, and that will disappear. So let's go ahead and run it now. So now each cat is born and it actually says its age. And you can tell that I made an effective local variable because each time a cat is born, it starts at 0 and then counts up. Now, I also want to have a longevity. So when I start as a clone, I'm going to set my age to 0, but I'm going to create a new variable as well, which is going to be called longevity. Longevity means how long you live. And I've noticed that people have trouble spelling longevity, so it doesn't matter if you spell it properly or not, but I will tell you how to spell it. So I'm going to make another variable, and again, it's going to be for this sprite only, and because it's a local variable, I'm going to always call it my, and then longevity is L-O-N-G-E-V-I-T-Y, which is how long you live. So, my longevity. When I start as a clone, I'm going to set my longevity. Click on this little arrow, and then I can choose my longevity to a random number between 1 and 15. Let's say 1 is pretty short. I don't want them to live just to be 1 second old. So I'll say somewhere between 5 seconds and 15 seconds. This is how old they can be. So I'm going to set my longevity to some number. And then not only am I going to say my age, but I'm actually going to say my age relative to its longevity. So I'm going to say my age, and then I'm going to put longevity here. My longevity. So now let's see what happens when I do this. Okay, so I'm going to hit run. Oh, that's weird. It would really be nice if this was presented as a fraction, like 4 over 11, or 1 over 13. So instead of having these two numbers together, I probably have to do another join. So I'm going to go to another join, and I'm going to build a more complex phrase by doing this. I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to join my longevity, my age. So I'm actually going to do a join and a join. Check this out. So my first join is going to be this. It's going to build a big phrase. So I put this here, and then I can put actually something in the middle, like a slash, which is a thing underneath the question mark. And then I think this will work. Let's go ahead and see if I got my fraction now. 0 of 6, 1 of 6, 2 of 6. Okay, beautiful. Now the last thing I want to do is when the age is greater than the longevity, I want to delete the clone. Okay? So let's see how I'll do this. I'll say if, and I should probably put it right here, if my age is greater than my longevity, then I want to do something. Okay, so if, I'll go to operators, here's the greater than. So if my age is greater than my longevity, my age is greater than my longevity, then I'm going to do a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm dying. That'll be kind of fun. So I'm going to go to looks and say I am dying for, how about 1 second. After it says I am dying for 1 second, I'm going to fade away. That'd be kind of fun if I sort of fade out. And then I'm going to delete the clone. So first let's talk about fading out. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to change what's called ghost effect. Ghost effect makes you see-through. So if I go to ghost effect, and I change it by 5, and I do that 20 times, then I will become see-through. So I'm going to repeat 20 times and change my ghost effect by 5. Put that here. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this clone. So let's take a look at this. I know this is complex, but if you break it down into little pieces and say what's happening at each piece, you should be able to follow what's happening. First, I'm going to hide this variable name. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on my longevity to hide it. And I'm going to run it just to see what it looks like. So he goes 1, 2, 3, or she, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it goes, I am dying, fades away, and dies. Okay? I am dying, fades away, and dies. So let's go through it and see if we understand why this is happening. When I start as a clone, I'm setting my rotation style left-right. That's why none of them are upside down. I'm going to be sure to show up. I'm going to turn in a random direction, and then forever I'm going to move 2 steps. If I'm on the edge, I'm going to bounce. Also, when I start as a clone, I'm going to say my age, then this little mark thing, and my longevity. And I had to use a join to make that work. If my age is greater than my longevity, I'm going to say I am dying for 1 second, and then I'm going to repeat 20 times, fade out, and die. And I'm going to delete this clone. And when I want to start as a clone, I'm going to set my age to 0, and it's a local variable. I'm going to set my longevity to a random number between 5 and 15. And then forever, I'm going to wait 1 second and change my age by 1. Something else you can do that is sort of fun is you can create an animation. Let me show you how to do that. An animation of them running. I think there's a way to make this smaller. You just drag it over here? No. Oh, here. I can click on this. There. That makes it even smaller so I can see more of my code. So if you think about what animation is when you change from one costume to another costume. So if you think about the costume we're working with, here's our costume, okay? And there's actually several costumes, I believe. Yeah, look, there's costume 1 and costume 2. And if you put them together really fast, do you see how that might be a running cat? Well, we can actually play with that to make the cats run. So if we go to our code, and we simply say in looks, next costume, and put that here, then watch what happens. They all start running. A little bit crazy, yes, but they all start running. So this project is called Cloning Cats. And what we did with this project, just to make sure that you understand how this thing works, is we've got a costume that changes, so that's why they're running. We've got them aging, we've got local variables, and we've got cloning. So hopefully you were able to figure out all of those things and understand this project. If there's a piece of this project you don't understand, then you really should ask me. Don't code just for the sake of coding. Make sure you truly understand every piece of the code. For example, why I named these variables my longevity and my age to show that they were local variables, and how important it is that they are, in fact, local variables. All right, so now that we're done, I'm going to make sure I save this as Cloning Cats. I'm going to hit File and Save Now. And that, in fact, is Cloning Cats.